The alarm bells rang across Sanctuary Prime like the cry of a dying animal. Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the massive enemy fleet move closer to their last safe world. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. The Vorthak ships filled the space around them like angry bees around a hive. "Sir, the outer shields are down to 30%, called his second officer. The young Alterian's voice shook as he spoke. "The enemy has broken through sectors 7 and 12. Zextar closed his 4 eyes for a moment. 200 years of peace in the galaxy, and now this. The Vorthak had come from beyond the edge of known space 6 months ago. They moved like a plague across star systems, taking every world they touched. They did not want to trade or talk. They only wanted to consume. "How many ships do we have left?" Zextar asked. 43, sir. The enemy has over 2,000. The numbers made Zextar's stomach turn cold. He had been a military officer for 50 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Vorthak fought like machines, but worse than machines. They thought as one mind and moved as one body. When one ship died, the others learned from its death instantly. Captain Jake Morrison, the human liaison officer, stood quietly in the corner of the bridge. He was the only human in the Federation fleet. Most aliens tried to avoid him. Humans had a bad reputation in the galaxy. 200 years ago, when first contact happened, things went very wrong. The Federation decided humans were too dangerous to join them. Earth was marked as a quarantine world. No one was supposed to go there. "Sir," Morrison said, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Maybe it's time to consider other options." Zextar looked at the human. Morrison was tall for his species, with dark hair and scars on his hands. He had been with the Federation for 10 years, but most officers still did not trust him. Humans were known for being violent and unpredictable. "What options?" Zextar asked. "We have tried everything. Our weapons barely scratch their ships. Our tactics mean nothing to them." Morrison was quiet for a moment, then he said, "There is one thing we haven't tried." Dr. Kirasol entered the bridge at that moment. She was a Nexari, with 4 arms and skin that looked like crystal. She was the smartest scientist in the Federation. Her face showed the same fear that everyone felt. "Admiral," she said, "I have been studying the Vorthak signals. They are getting stronger. I think they are calling more ships." "More ships?" The second officer made a choking sound. "How many more can there be?" "Unknown," Kirasol said. "But if my calculations are right, we have maybe 2 days before they break through our main shields. After that," she did not need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. The Vorthak would land on Sanctuary Prime. They would turn every living thing on the planet into one of them. Zextar felt the weight of 12 species on his shoulders. The Federation had been built on peace and cooperation. Every member species brought something special to the group. The Alterians brought military skill, the Nexari brought science, the Voltans brought art and culture. Together they had created something beautiful. Now it was all going to die. "Sir," Morrison said again, "we need to talk about Earth." The bridge went quiet. Even the alarm bells seemed softer. Earth was a word that most Federation officers knew but never said out loud. It was the forbidden world, the dangerous world. "Absolutely not," the second officer said quickly. "The humans are quarantined for good reason. They are violent and crazy. They fight wars for fun. They would probably join the Vorthak just to have a better fight." Morrison's face did not change, but his hands made fists. "My people are not monsters," he said quietly. "Are you sure about that?" Kirasol asked. Her crystal skin flashed different colors when she was thinking hard. "I have read the reports from first contact. Your species fights each other constantly. You have weapons that can destroy entire planets. You seem to enjoy violence. We also protect what we care about," Morrison said, "and we never give up." Zextar thought about this. He had worked with Morrison for 10 years. The human was different from other species, that was true. He was quick to anger but also quick to help. He made decisions fast, sometimes too fast. But he had never broken his word. and he had saved Federation lives more than once. Even if we wanted to contact Earth, Zextar said, it would take weeks for a message to reach them. We don't have weeks. We have the quantum communicator, Kirasol said slowly. The experimental one. It could send a message instantly. The second officer shook his head. This is madness. We would be inviting devils to fight devils. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and several officers fell down. Outside the windows they could see Vorthak ships getting closer. Their black hulls looked like holes in space itself. Shields down to 20%, someone called out. Zextar looked around the bridge. He saw fear in every face. These were good people, smart people, brave people. But they were not warriors. The Federation had known peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. The Vorthak knew how to fight. It was all they knew. Dr. Kirasol, Zextar said finally, prepare the quantum communicator. Sir? She asked. We are going to call Earth, he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. We're going to ask for help from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The second officer looked shocked. Admiral, this could be the end of the Federation as we know it. Zextar watched another Federation ship explode outside the window. Its crew of 300 was gone in an instant. Look around, he said. The Federation is already ending. At least this way. Maybe some of us will survive to learn from our mistakes. Morrison stepped forward. What do you want me to tell them? Zextar thought for a moment. How do you ask devils for help? How do you admit that the peaceful galaxy needs its most violent children? Tell them the truth, he said. Tell them we are dying. Tell them we need them. Tell them we are sorry for keeping them away for so long. Morrison nodded. And if they say no? Zextar looked out at the Vorthak fleet. Soon they would be close, enough to start landing troops. Then it would all be over. Then we die knowing we tried everything, he said. As the quantum communicator powered up, Zextar wondered if they were making the right choice. The humans were dangerous, yes, but maybe sometimes you needed dangerous friends to fight dangerous enemies. The message went out into space, traveling faster than light toward a small blue world that the galaxy had tried to forget. In a few hours, they would have their answer. Zextar just hoped they would still be alive to hear it. The message from space arrived at Earth's orbital station at 3 a.m, local time. The duty officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, was drinking his 4th cup of coffee when the quantum receiver started making sounds it had never made before. The machine was old and dusty. Most people had forgotten it even existed. Cooper called his supervisor, then his supervisor called the general, and within an hour the message was on President Sam Carter's desk in Washington. Carter was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been president for 6 years and she had never expected to deal with aliens. Play it again, she told her aide. The voice of Admiral Zextar filled the room. It spoke in accented English, the words careful and formal. This is Admiral Zextar of the Galactic Federation. We are sending this message to Earth with great urgency. Our people are under attack by an enemy called the Vorthak. We are losing this war. Many worlds have already fallen. We need help. We are sorry for the quarantine. We are sorry for keeping you away. But if you can hear this, please help us, please. The message ended with coordinates and technical details about the enemy. Carter looked around the room at her advisors. Defense Secretary Amy Rodriguez sat at the table, her dark hair pulled back tight. She was a soldier who had worked her way up through the ranks. Next to her was Dr. Ben Collins, an old man who had been there during first contact 200 years ago. Well? Carter asked. What do we think? It's real, Collins said. The quantum signature matches Federation technology, and the language patterns are Alterian. This Admiral Zextar is telling the truth. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. So the same people who called us too dangerous to join their little club now want our help? The situation seems desperate, Collins said. The Vorthak sound like a serious threat. Carter looked at the star charts on the wall. Earth was marked with a small blue dot, alone in its section of space. Around it was a red circle that marked the quarantine zone. No Federation ships were supposed to come within 50 light-years of Earth. How long has it been since we had any contact with them? Carter asked. 43 years, Collins said. Since the incident at Proxima Station. Everyone in the room knew about Proxima Station. A group of human traders had tried to establish contact with the Federation. The Federation had sent ships to turn them away. Things got heated. Shots were fired. 3 Federation ships were destroyed before the humans retreated. The galaxy decided humans were too violent to be trusted. What do we know about these Vorthak? Rodriguez asked. Collins pulled up files on his computer. From what I can understand, they're a hive mind species. They convert other life forms into themselves. They've been moving across the galaxy for months, taking everything in their path. Sounds like a problem for the Federation, Rodriguez said. Except they're losing, Carter said. Badly from the sound of it. Admiral Tony Blake entered the room. He was a big man with a gray beard and hands like hammers. He commanded Earth's space fleet, such as it was. Most Earth ships were designed for defense, not long-range travel. Madam President, Blake said, I've been reviewing the technical data they sent. These Vorthak ships are tough, heavy armor, powerful weapons, and they fight as a group, but they're not impossible to beat. How do you know? Rodriguez asked. Blake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Because they fight like machines. They're predictable. Humans, we're not predictable. Carter walked to the window and looked out at the city below. 200 years ago, humanity had reached for the stars and been told they were not welcome. Since then, they had built their own technology, their own ships, their own way of life. They had grown strong in isolation. What's our fleet strength? She asked. 500 ships, Blake said. Not as big as what the Federation probably has, but our ships are built different. Tougher, more flexible. And our crews. He paused. Well, they're human. Dr. Collins cleared his throat. Madam President, I should point out that this could be an opportunity. If we help the Federation, maybe they'll finally accept us as equals. Or maybe they'll just use us and throw us away again, Rodriguez said. Carter turned back to the room. What's your honest assessment, Admiral? Can we win this fight? Blake thought for a moment. Depends on how smart these Vorthak are. If they fight like the Federation expects them to fight, then probably not. But if they've never fought humans before? He shrugged. Could be interesting. Interesting is one word for it, Rodriguez said. Suicidal is another. The president sat back down. She had been elected to keep Earth safe and strong. But she had also promised to end humanity's isolation from the galaxy. This might be their only chance. General Rodriguez, she said. What would it take to mobilize our forces? Rodriguez opened her files. We could have 300 ships ready to move in 1 week. The other 200 would need more time for repairs and supplies. And the crews? That's the easy part, Rodriguez said. Half our pilots are eager for a real fight. The other half think the Federation can go to hell. What about you? Carter asked. What do you think? Rodriguez was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I think we've been patient long enough. For 200 years we've stayed in our corner of space like good little children. Maybe it's time to remind the galaxy what humans can do. Blake nodded. I agree. Besides, these Vorthak sound like the kind of enemy that won't stop with the Federation. If they win out there, they'll come here eventually. Collins looked worried. There's another consideration. The Federation species are not warriors. They've had peace for generations. If we go to help them, we need to be prepared for cultural differences. You mean they'll be shocked by how we fight, Rodriguez said. Yes. Human military doctrine is very different from theirs. They might not like our methods. Carter stood up again. The weight of the decision pressed down on her shoulders. Millions of people depended on her choice. If she said yes, human ships would leave Earth and fly into a war zone far from home. Many would not come back. If she said no, the galaxy might fall to an enemy that would eventually threaten Earth anyway. Admiral Blake, she said finally, how long to reach Federation space? 2 weeks at maximum speed. And you think we can make a difference? Blake's smile returned. Madam President, the Federation has been fighting a defensive war against an enemy they don't understand. They're trying to be civilized against an enemy that isn't. We're not going to make that mistake. Carter looked around the room one more time, then she made her decision. General Rodriguez, start mobilizing the fleet. Admiral Blake, I want our best ships and our best crews. Dr. Collins, prepare a response to the Federation. Tell them help is coming. What should the message say? Collins asked. Carter thought about all the years of isolation, all the times. Earth had been told they were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable for galactic society. Tell them we received their call for help. Tell them the United Earth Fleet is coming. And tell them to be ready because we're bringing the kind of help they've never seen before. As her advisors left to carry out her orders, Carter remained at the window. In a week, hundreds of human ships would leave Earth and travel to a part of space they had never seen. They would fight alongside aliens who had once called them monsters. She wondered if the galaxy was ready for humanity's return. She wondered if humanity was ready for the galaxy. The space around Sanctuary Prime looked like a graveyard. Broken Federation ships drifted between the stars like metal bones. The planet's shields flickered and sparked, failing a little more each hour. Vorthak ships moved closer, their black hulls reflecting no light. Admiral Zextar stood on his bridge watching his fleet die. In the past 2 days, they had lost 30 more ships. The enemy seemed endless. Every time they destroyed one Vorthak vessel, 3 more took its place. Sir, his communications officer called out. I'm getting something strange on the deep space sensors. Strange how? Zextar asked. He was too tired to care about anything except the enemy ships getting ready to land troops on his world. Unknown ships approaching from Sector 12. The signature is unusual. Dr. Kirasol looked up from her station. Could it be reinforcements from the outer colonies? No, the officer said. This is something different. The energy patterns don't match any Federation design. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. One moment there was nothing. The next moment, there were ships. Not just a few ships, hundreds of them. They appeared in perfect formation, moving fast and straight toward the battle. What are those? Zextar asked. Captain Morrison stepped forward, and for the first time in days he was smiling. Those are Earth ships, sir. My people answered your call. The human fleet was unlike anything in the galaxy. Federation ships were smooth and curved, built for exploration and science. These new ships looked like weapons. They had sharp angles and thick armor. Dark gray metal covered their hulls. Some had spikes and fins that served no obvious purpose except to look frightening. There are so many of them, Kirasol whispered. Morrison checked his personal communicator. 300 ships in the first wave, sir. More coming behind them. The Vorthak had noticed the new arrivals. Their formation shifted, turning part of their fleet to face this unknown threat. The hive mind was confused. These ships did not match any known Federation design. Commander Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, the flagship of the human fleet. He was a big man with scars on his face and gray in his hair. He had been fighting wars for 20 years, but this was his first alien war. All ships, this is Stone, he said into his communicator. We've got a situation here. Looks like the Federation is getting beaten pretty badly. The tactical display showed the battle clearly. Federation ships were scattered and defensive. The Vorthak ships moved in perfect coordination like parts of one giant machine. And there were so many of them. Sir, his weapons officer said, the alien ships are turning toward us. I count over 800 enemy vessels. Good, Stone said. Saves us the trouble of hunting them down. All ships weapons free. Let's show these bugs what humans do to bullies. The first human ship to open fire was the destroyer UES Angry Dog. Its captain, Linda Ross, had been itching for a fight since leaving Earth. Her ship's railguns sent metal slugs flying at incredible speed toward the nearest Vorthak vessel. The alien ship's shields flared and collapsed. The railgun slugs tore through its hull like paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Direct hit, Ross called over the radio. These bugs aren't so tough. More human ships opened fire. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire, but it was different from anything the Federation had seen before. Federation weapons were clean energy beams that disabled rather than destroyed. Human weapons were designed to kill. The Vorthak ships tried to respond, but the humans were already moving. Federation ships stayed in formation and fought defensively. Human ships scattered like wolves, each one hunting its own targets. They moved fast and struck hard, then moved again before the enemy could respond. "They're using nuclear weapons," Kirasol said in shock, watching the battle from the Federation flagship. Morrison nodded. "Standard human doctrine. If you're going to fight, fight to win. But the radiation will clean up in a few years. The important thing is stopping the enemy now." Commander Stone watched his fleet tear into the Vorthak formation. The enemy was tough and numerous, but they were also predictable. They moved like they expected their opponents to behave rationally. Humans were not rational in battle. "Sir," his communications officer said, "the UES Mad Dog is taking heavy damage. Captain Kelly says his engines are failing." Stone looked at the tactical display. The Mad Dog was surrounded by 5 Vorthak ships, all pouring fire into its hull. 3. Human ship was doomed. "Tell Kelly to give them my regards," Stone said. Captain Joe Kelly received the message and grinned. His ship was dying around him, but he still had one card to play. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going out in style. Set course for the biggest ugly ship you can see. Full speed." The Mad Dog turned toward a massive Vorthak capital ship. Its engines roared to life one last time, pushing the dying vessel faster and faster. The human crew sang an old battle song as they prepared for impact. The Vorthak ship tried to move away, but it was too big and slow. The Mad Dog struck it at full speed, both ships disappearing in a nuclear fireball that lit up space like a new star. "Did they just?" Zextar started to ask. "Ramming speed," Morrison said. "It's an old human tactic. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure the other guy loses worse than you do." The Vorthak hive mind was struggling to understand what it was fighting. These new ships didn't follow any logical pattern. They sacrificed themselves to hurt the enemy. They used weapons that damaged everything around them. They seemed to enjoy the chaos of battle. Lieutenant Colonel Dana Walsh was leading the first human boarding party onto a captured Vorthak ship. Her soldiers wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked more like construction tools than military equipment. "Remember," she told her troops, "these bugs fight as one mind. Disrupt their communications first, then clean out the rest." The human soldiers moved through the alien ship like a virus through a body. They didn't try to capture territory or take prisoners. They just destroyed everything they found. The Vorthak drones were tough and well-armed, but they had never fought an enemy that seemed to view death as just another tactic. Walsh's team reached the ship's central computer. Instead of trying to capture it, they planted explosives and moved on to the next target. When the charges went off, the ship's entire hive mind connection was severed. The remaining drones wandered aimlessly, no longer able to coordinate. "Ship cleared," Walsh reported. "Moving to the next target." Back on the Retribution, Stone was coordinating the battle from his command chair. Human ships darted in and out of the enemy formation like angry hornets. They didn't try to hold territory or maintain formation. They just kept attacking until something broke. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Federation flagship." "Put it through." Admiral Zextar's face appeared on the screen. The alien looked shocked and frightened. "Commander Stone, your tactics are unusual." "They're effective," Stone replied. "Your people might want to fall back and let us handle this. But the casualties are acceptable," Stone said. "This is war, Admiral. People die in wars. The trick is to make sure more of them die than us." Zextar was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We are grateful for your help, but your methods are very different from ours." Stone smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Admiral, you called us because you were losing. We're here to win. If you don't like how we fight, you should have called someone else." The battle continued for 6 more hours. When it was over, the space around Sanctuary Prime was filled with debris from both sides. The human fleet had lost 47 ships and nearly 10,000 people, but the Vorthak fleet was gone. All 800 ships had been destroyed or disabled. As the last enemy ship exploded, Stone opened a channel to all Federation forces. "This is Commander Stone of the United Earth Fleet," he said. "The immediate threat to Sanctuary Prime has been eliminated, but this is just the beginning. We're going to hunt down every last Vorthak ship in the galaxy and destroy them. If any Federation ships want to help, you're welcome to follow us. If not, stay out of our way." Admiral Zextar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at the human ships with a mixture of awe and fear. These humans had just done what the entire Federation fleet could not do. They had beaten the Vorthak. But the way they had done it. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "should we follow them?" Zextar thought about Captain Morrison, who had served faithfully for 10 years. He thought about the human ships ramming the enemy at full speed. He thought about soldiers who sang songs while flying into certain death. "Yes," he said finally, "we follow them and we learn." The war changed after Sanctuary Prime. Before the humans arrived, the Federation had been losing slowly, fighting a desperate defense against an unstoppable enemy. Now the galaxy was watching something it had never seen before. The Vorthak in a retreat. Colonel Pete Morrison stood on the bridge of the troop transport UES Iron Fist, watching the surface of Kepler 7 through the viewport. The planet had been a Vorthak breeding world for 2 months. What had once been green fields and blue oceans was now a gray wasteland, covered in alien structures. "Sir," his sergeant Maria Santos said, "the orbital bombardment is complete. Resistance should be minimal." Pete nodded. He was Jake Morrison's younger brother, but where Jake was diplomatic, Pete was direct. Minimal for normal troops, maybe. But these aren't normal troops we're fighting. The human ground forces were different from anything the galaxy had seen. Federation armies were small, professional units that fought clean wars with precise tactics. Human armies were massive, brutal, and designed for one purpose: to completely destroy the enemy. "Remember the mission," Pete told his soldiers over the communicator. "We're not here to capture territory. We're not here to take prisoners. We're here to make sure this planet never threatens anyone again." Dr. Sarah Kim worked in a laboratory aboard the UES science vessel Darwin. She was young for a bioweapons specialist with dark hair and hands that never stopped moving. Her job was to study captured Vorthak specimens and find ways to hurt them. "The hive-mind connection is biological," she explained to her team. "Each drone has an organ that sends and receives signals. If we can disrupt that organ..." She had been working for weeks on a virus that would attack the Vorthak nervous system. It was designed to be fast, deadly, and specific to their species. The Federation had rules about biological weapons. Humans did not. "Testing shows the virus spreads through their communication network," Kim said. "One infected drone can spread it to hundreds of others in hours." Her assistant, Dr. Bob Chen, looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, this could kill millions of them." "Good," Kim said without looking up from her microscope. "That's the point." Captain Alex Turner led the human special operations team that no one talked about. They didn't wear uniforms or carry identification. Their missions were classified at levels that most generals didn't have clearance for. Turner's team had landed on Vorthak Prime 3 days ago. The enemy homeworld was heavily defended, with orbital platforms and ground-based weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But they had one weakness. They had never dealt with human special forces. "The main hive complex is 2 kilometers ahead," Turner whispered into his radio. His team moved through the alien landscape like ghosts, invisible to the enemy sensors. The Vorthak homeworld was a nightmare of organic architecture. Buildings grew from the ground like cancerous tumors. The air was thick with spores that made everything smell like rotting meat. But Turner and his team had been modified with genetic treatments that let them survive in alien environments. "Remember," Turner said, "we need to plant the charges at the primary nodes. Once the hive mind goes dark, the entire species loses coordination." Meanwhile, in space above different worlds, the human fleet was conducting operations that horrified their Federation allies. Commander Stone's ships didn't just attack military targets, they destroyed everything that could support the Vorthak war effort. "Sir," His communications officer said, "Admiral Zextar is requesting permission to speak with you." Stone sighed. The Federation officers had been complaining about human tactics for weeks. "Put him through." Zextar's face appeared on the screen. The alien looked tired and stressed. "Commander Stone, I must protest your latest actions. The orbital bombardment of Vorthak colonies is effective," Stone interrupted. "Every colony we destroy is one less source of enemy troops." "But the scale of destruction is what it takes to win," Stone said. "Admiral, your people fought these bugs for months and lost every battle. We've been fighting them for 6 weeks, and we're winning. Don't tell me how to do my job." The Vorthak Prime consciousness was experiencing something new. Fear. For millions of years, it had expanded across the galaxy, consuming other species and adding their strength to its own. Nothing had ever been able to stop it. But these humans were different. They didn't fight like other species. They didn't try to preserve their own lives or minimize casualties. They fought like a disease, spreading destruction wherever they went. The worst part was their unpredictability. The consciousness could calculate the behavior of every other species in the galaxy. But humans seemed to make decisions randomly, without logic or pattern. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't follow its own best interests? On the surface of Kepler 7, Pete Morrison's troops were advancing through the ruins of a Vorthak city. The aliens had built their structures from a mixture of metal and organic matter that pulsed with its own life. It was disgusting, but the humans pushed forward anyway. "Contact front," Sergeant Santos called out. A group of Vorthak drones emerged from a building, their weapons charging with energy. The human soldiers responded instantly. Instead of taking cover and returning fire like Federation troops would do, they charged straight at the enemy. Their battle cry was an old song from Earth, something about going home to their families. The Vorthak drones were programmed to fight rational enemies. They didn't know how to deal with soldiers who ran toward death while singing. Dr. Kim's virus was working better than expected. Reports came in from across the galaxy of Vorthak ships going dark, their crews dead or dying. The biological weapons spread through their communication network like wildfire, attacking the very thing that made them strong. "The infection rate is exceeding projections," Kim reported to the Fleet Command. "We should see a 50% reduction in enemy effectiveness within the next week." Admiral Blake, who was commanding the human fleet from Earth, reviewed the year reports with satisfaction. The Vorthak had made one critical mistake. They had threatened humanity's new allies. Now they were learning why the galaxy had quarantined Earth in the first place. Captain Turner's Special Operations team reached their target on Vorthak Prime. The main hive complex was a massive structure that pulsed with alien energy. It was here that the Prime consciousness coordinated the activities of billions of drones across hundreds of worlds. "Charges set," Turner reported. 30 seconds to detonation. The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The hive complex collapsed, taking with it the central nervous system of the entire Vorthak species. Across the galaxy, Vorthak ships suddenly stopped moving. Drones wandered aimlessly, no longer able to receive orders. But the humans weren't finished. Even with the hive mind crippled, there were still millions of Vorthak drones scattered across the galaxy. Each one was a potential threat. "New orders from Earth Command," Stone announced to his fleet. "Complete eradication, no survivors." Admiral Zextar received the message with horror. "Commander Stone, surely this goes too far. The Vorthak are defeated. There's no need for genocide." Stone's face was hard as stone when he replied. "Admiral, your people called us because you were facing extinction. Now we're making sure the threat is extinct instead. This is what you asked for." "But we didn't ask for this level of destruction." "Yes, you did," Stone said. "You just didn't realize it. When you call humans for help, this is what you get. We don't do half measures. We don't leave enemies alive to threaten us later. We finish the job." The final phase of the war lasted 3 more weeks. Human ships hunted down every Vorthak vessel, every colony, every outpost. They used weapons that the Federation considered too dangerous for civilized warfare. They showed no mercy and asked for none. Dr. Kim's virus ensured that even hidden Vorthak populations couldn't survive. The biological weapon was designed to remain active for years, making it impossible for the species to rebuild. When it was over, the Vorthak were gone. Not defeated, not scattered, gone. An entire species that had threatened the galaxy for millions of years had been completely eliminated in less than 3 months. The Federation had called for help and received salvation. But as they looked at the empty space where Vorthak worlds had once been, many wondered if the cure had been worse than the disease. Admiral Zextar stood on his bridge, looking at the final battle report. The humans had lost 20,000 soldiers and 150 ships. In return, they had destroyed an entire species and everything it had built. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Commander Stone is requesting permission to establish human colonies in the former Vorthak territory." Zextar closed his eyes. The humans weren't going away. They had saved the galaxy, and now they wanted their reward. The question was, what did you do with saviors who frightened you more than your enemies had? 6 months after the last Vorthak ship was destroyed, the galaxy was finally quiet. But it was not the same kind of quiet as before. The peace that came after the humans arrived was different, heavier, more careful. Ambassador Janet Miller walked through the halls of the Federation Council building on New Geneva. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. As Earth's first official ambassador to the galactic community, she carried the weight of 200 years of isolation on her shoulders. The council chamber was full when she entered. Representatives from all 12 Federation species sat in their designated areas, but the atmosphere was tense. Everyone was trying not to stare at the human section, where Captain Morrison sat with a small group of Earth diplomatic staff. Elder Kexvan of the High Council stood to address the assembly. He was old even by Altarian standards, his blue skin marked with the silver lines of age. "We are gathered today to discuss the integration of humanity into the galactic community." The word integration hung in the air like a bad smell. Everyone knew this wasn't really about integration. This was about what to do with a species that had just proved they could destroy anyone who threatened them. "The humans saved us," Elder Kexavan continued. "This cannot be denied. Without their intervention, we would all be dead or converted by the Vorthak. We owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid." Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber, but they sounded forced. However, Kexavan said, and the room went quiet again, "Their methods of warfare have raised serious concerns among many member species." Representative Voltar of the Nexari delegation stood up. His crystal skin flashed angry red colors. "Concerns? They committed genocide, an entire species wiped from existence." "A species that was trying to wipe out everyone else," Captain Morrison said calmly from the human section. "We finished what they started." "That's exactly the problem," Voltar replied. "You don't seem to understand the difference between victory and extermination." Ambassador Miller remained seated, watching the debate with careful eyes. She had expected this. The Federation species were peaceful by nature. They had built their civilization on cooperation and compromise. The idea of total war was foreign to them. Dr. Lyranus, a representative from the Volth delegation, spoke next. Her species were known for their philosophical nature. "Ambassador Miller, perhaps you could help us understand, why did your people feel it necessary to eliminate the Vorthak so completely?" Miller stood slowly. When she spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "Dr. Lyranus, with respect, you're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't ask why we eliminated them. You should ask why you didn't." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Miller waited for them to quiet down before continuing. "The Vorthak had been expanding for millions of years," she said. "They had consumed hundreds of species before they reached Federation space. If we had just defeated their current fleet and left their breeding colonies intact, what do you think would have happened in 50 years? 100 years? They would have returned," Admiral Zextar said quietly from his position near the military observers, "stronger than before." Exactly, Miller said. We didn't commit genocide, council members. We prevented it. We made sure the Vorthak could never threaten anyone again. Elder Zenkara of the ethereal commune floated forward. Her species rarely spoke in council meetings. The means you used, the biological weapons, the orbital bombardments, these are forbidden by galactic law. Miller smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. Galactic law that we never agreed to follow, since we were never allowed to join the galactic community. You can't exclude us for 200 years and then expect us to follow your rules. The truth of that statement settled over the chamber, like a cold wind. The Federation had created this situation by quarantining humanity. Now they had to live with the consequences. Representative Ixthor from the Centauri Alliance stepped forward. What assurance do we have that humans will not use these same methods against Federation members? You have our word, Miller said simply. Your word? Voltar's crystal skin flashed skeptical purple. Based on what? Your species has a history of violence against each other. How do we know you won't turn on us? Captain Morrison stood up, his face hard. Because you're not trying to wipe us out. The Vorthak were. It's really that simple. But your capacity for destruction is exactly why you called us for help. Morrison interrupted. You can't have it both ways. Either we're useful allies or we're dangerous enemies. You choose. The chamber fell silent. The Federation representatives looked at each other, communicating in the subtle ways their species had developed over centuries of cooperation. But they couldn't communicate away the basic truth of the situation. Humanity was here, and they weren't going away. Elder Kexavan called for a recess. The various delegations split into smaller groups, discussing the situation in urgent whispers. Miller noticed that most of them kept glancing at the human section, as if expecting the humans to suddenly attack. During the break, Admiral Zextar approached Miller. Ambassador, may I speak with you privately? They walked to a quiet corner of the chamber. Zextar looked tired, older than he had 6 months ago. I want to thank you again for what your people did. But, Miller prompted, but I have to ask, was it necessary to be so thorough? Miller looked out the window at New Geneva's twin suns. Admiral, let me ask you something. If the Vorthak had succeeded in converting your people, would they have shown mercy to human civilians? Would they have preserved Federation culture and art? No, Zextar admitted. Then why should we have shown them mercy? Miller asked. We're not monsters, Admiral. We're just practical. When something threatens our friends, we eliminate the threat completely. And that's what frightens people, Zextar said. Miller nodded. I know. But fear isn't always a bad thing. The galaxy was peaceful before because everyone was too weak to threaten anyone else. Now it can be peaceful because everyone knows what happens to species that start wars. When the council reconvened, Elder Kexavan read the prepared statement. After much deliberation, the Federation Council has decided to offer full membership to humanity. The words should have been celebratory, but they sounded more like a surrender. However, Kexvan continued, there will be conditions. Human military operations must be approved by the Council. Human weapons technology will be subject to Federation oversight, and humans will be required to follow all galactic laws regarding warfare. Miller stood slowly. Elder Kexavan, with all due respect, those conditions are unacceptable. The chamber buzzed with shocked voices. Kexavan looked confused. Ambassador, we are offering you what your people have wanted for 2 centuries. You're offering us membership. As junior partners, Miller said. That's not what we want anymore. She walked to the center of the chamber where all the delegates could see her clearly. 6 months ago, you were hours away from extinction. You called us not because you respected us, but because you were desperate. We came anyway. We saved you anyway. We lost 20,000 of our people saving yours. The chamber was completely silent now. So here's what's going to happen, Miller continued. Humanity will take full membership in the Federation as equal partners. We will follow galactic law where it makes sense. We will defend Federation members who are threatened, and in return you will never again treat us like dangerous children who need to be controlled. And if we refuse? Voltar asked. Miller's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we'll establish our own alliance with the worlds that want our protection. I think you'll find that many species would prefer to have humans as friends rather than neighbors. Elder, Kexvan looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. He could see the fear in their faces, but he could also see the logic in Miller's words. Humanity was too powerful to exclude and too useful to antagonize. Very well, he said finally. Humanity will be granted full membership with equal status. The vote was unanimous, though not enthusiastic. As the council session ended, Miller gathered her staff. That went better than expected, Captain Morrison said. Did it? Miller asked. They're afraid of us, Jake. Maybe that's good for keeping the peace, but it's not good for building relationships. Give them time, Morrison said. Fear fades. Respect lasts. Outside the council building, human ships were already establishing colonies in the former Vorthak territory. Earth engineering teams were building space stations and mining facilities. Human families were moving to worlds that had been sterilized of all alien life. The galaxy was learning to live with humanity as neighbors. Some species embraced the new reality, eager to trade with Earth or benefit from human protection. Others withdrew, preferring isolation to the risk of offending their dangerous new allies. But everyone understood the new rules. The galaxy had been saved by its most feared children. Those children had grown up, and they weren't going back to the corner they had been placed in. Ambassador Miller stood in her new office looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the galaxy's borders, making sure no new threats emerged. Other human ships explored unknown regions, expanding the boundaries of known space. Earth was no longer alone. Her assistant brought her the daily reports, trade agreements with 6 species, defense pacts with 3 more. A request,